I must have a word with the cook about that cake. It's not up to my standard. I was always known for my hospitality, and during the presidency I was able to bring many of those skills of entertaining I learned from my mother greatly to the fore. We have had to entertain a great deal these past 8 years, and I always tried to be hospitable. I well remember when the general was first announced that he had been elected unanimous to the presidency. I was worried that he was too old. He had served long enough. He had been to the Congress to bring forth the Constitution and to preside in '87. How could the country ask more of him, I thought, than he'd already given? But of course it did. I remember that April day in '89 when they came to tell him he had been elected unanimous to be the country's first president. I worried. He was 57 years of age, and we were just bringing Mount Vernon back. We had our 2 youngest grandchildren to raise. They were but 8 and 10 years of age, and the presidency was an unknown situation. Remember, no one had ever even had a country such as ours, let alone the office of president. So it was an unknown situation, or as the general called the presidency, my untrodden path. And I would trod on it together with him and the young children. An 8-year-old, a 10-year-old, and my old parrot to come along for company we were, as we set off for the city of New York, which was our first capital city. From the very first I saw how everyone wanted just to have a touch of the great man, to come to see him, and how his time was taken up. So I decided to have a weekly schedule of entertainments so they would know when they could see him. I had a dinner for the men of government on Tuesdays, the men of government, their ladies and dignitaries, on Thursdays, and my Friday evening receptions, whereby everybody could come and meet him. All of our ability to be hospitable came into the fore. They were long years, though, of great care and concernment on his part. I was busy seeing to what the new president's lady had ought to take on as her role. I had been the general's lady, so all began to call me the president's lady as well. And I had my 2 young grandchildren to see schooled. Nellie had lessons in music and entertained the men of government, and my grandson Washington had the most delightful experiences, especially in Philadelphia City, where we spent so much of the time. The years passed very quickly. I did not expect the general to stay on for a 2nd term. In fact, many people wanted him to stay on and be president for the rest of his life. They had wanted, after all, to make him the king of America after the war, and they couldn't imagine any other person in that situation. They worried the power could never be passed peaceably. And that is why, after the 2nd term, the general refused another. Thinking of the country, he said, "I want to make certain that our little republic can pass this, its first great test, that there could be an orderly transition take place and a new president be given the power." And on the 4th day of March, 1797, almost a year past now, Mr. Adams took that oath of office. There was no contest, no trouble over it. It all was a peaceful and orderly transition. And I was overjoyed, because I knew then I could bring the general home to Mount Vernon. His duty at last done, I wanted to bring Farmer Washington home for his much-deserved retirement. He knew then the presidency could continue. His duty had been done.